Jackie Dean.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Just a couple of points I want to raise, perhaps in reply to the seemingly ongoing speeches of the opposition. And the first one is over, taking a call now, and the first one is private management of prisons. And it is a given that the Labour Greens will not support and cannot understand or get their head around how the private management of a prison can be beneficial, but this government can. And so that is why this government has undertaken private management of the prisons. There is nothing about this policy that the Labour Greens can ever support, and so it's probably no wonder that they will stand up in this House and say nothing good about the private management and the private sector involvement in Mount Eden and in the management and then construction for Wiri can in fact have the impact of bringing in fresh ideas into our prison system, and it can in fact improve public safety. They can bring in, Suko and their management team can bring in innovation into our correction system and also into our rehabilitation services. Actually, it could be a breath of fresh air, I would suggest, into our correction services, which can bring benefits which can be shared across the prison network. But of course, because of their philosophical position, the Labour Greens and New Zealand First will never entertain the idea that that could be possible. All they can entertain is the idea that has got to be bad. And so that leads me to the next question, is what really matters in our prisons? Is it the fact that the prison service might be contracted out to private contractors? Is that what matters? No, I would suggest what matters in our correction service is keeping the public safe, is providing good rehabilitation and reintegration services to prisoners in their care. And guess what? That is exactly what our corrections service is doing. In fact, I'd also venture to note that under National, under the past 4 years, confidence in the corrections service is 53% higher than it was when we came into government in Tuta. And so the member who has just resumed his seat mentioned how wonderful the Labour government was in the corrections service. Well, I recall very well the then Corrections Minister, Judith Collins, having to come in and face an absolute crisis in the corrections and in prisoner housing. In fact, it was so bad that the Corrections Minister had to bring in container accommodation. Not true, says Labour, because they don't actually want to face up to what happened, because we saw it for ourselves. Honourable Judith Collins, when she was the Corrections Minister, and brought in double-stacking containers, and I recall in the previous contribution in this speech, Labour said, oh, they're terrible, they're terrible. They're not actually, because when the Select Committee visited Rimutaka Prison and visited that container unit, which is too high and shaped in a courtyard shape, the prisoners were perfectly happy with them. In fact, they liked them because they were warm, they were contained, they felt safe within them. So let's not be having this fallacy and this rewriting of history by Labour that corrections was in a wonderful condition before the National Government came in, because it is demonstrably not true. I just want to also talk about the issue of strip searching, which again seems to have become a cause célèbre for the Labour Greens. You know, how awful it is that mirrors and lights are being used for strip searching, and some uniformity has been brought into the process. And what I say, and what we were also told in Select Committee, but of course the Labour Greens don't like to, or New Zealand First like to acknowledge that, is what it does is bring a uniformity into the strip searching procedures is twofold. What happens is that there is some certainty brought into the process. So if a prisoner comes back in from a court appearance or from some other reason from being outside the wire, they know they are going to get a certain level of strip searching no matter what. That ratchets down not only the tension on behalf of the prisoner and also the prison officer, but it acts as a very powerful deterrent. Who are we talking, Mr Chair? Mr Chair, who are we talking about here? We're talking about prisoners. These are people who have been convicted of crimes and sent to prison. There is something very good, in my view, about sending a deterrent to those people. The second aspect I just want to touch on is the use of mirrors and lights, which somehow has taken on the spectre of being somehow more intrusive. Now, I would put it to those members across the House that the use of a mirror and a light on a fitting to have a look at the things that need to be looked at by prisoners has got to be a whole lot less intrusive than the prison officer actually having to bend down and take a look. I've left you with enough pictures in your minds to be going on with, and so that is the end of my contribution for the moment.
Chris Farfoy.
Mr Chair.